Most people believe they are calm until a slow driver, a stupid comment online, or a careless remark from a coworker occurs. Then the reflex flares up almost automatically. Few people realize that this is not just a matter of temper, but a subtle form of loss of control. Like unconsciously handing over the steering wheel of emotions to any small external event. On the surface, people may talk about rational control of emotions, but in reality, it only takes a very small stimulus to pull them out of that state. From a Stoic perspective, anger over trivial matters is not harmless. It is a silent enemy, not as loud as a great tragedy, but gradually eroding concentration, judgment, and dignity. A stupid word from a stranger, an unconscious behavior, a disrespectful look, all can become excuses for the nervous system to switch into reactive mode. At that point, we no longer have a choice. We just react. And it is the moment of losing that choice that is the Stoic point of interest. From a psychological perspective, this shows a recurring pattern. The brain prioritizes protecting the wounded ego over protecting sanity. Instead of asking, does this situation really matter? Most people immediately interpret it as a personal attack. When misinterpreted, anger becomes the default. Stoics aren't trying to paint things in a positive light. They're just looking at exactly what's going on inside us when we get angry for the slightest reason. So if we look closely at each moment of irritation during the day, what will we see about ourselves? A person who masters their reactions, or a person whose brain is being retrained by petty annoyances every day? Many people think they can't control their anger, but the strange thing is that anger doesn't come immediately. Before an emotional outburst, there's always a tiny moment, enough for us to choose how to react, but most of us miss it. We don't lose our temper because of an external event, but because we react too quickly before our brain has time to think. Everything happens like an instinctive pull. Someone says a thoughtless word, a rude action, and the body immediately mobilizes defensive emotions. If you review each time you get angry, you'll see that the problem isn't the event, but the fact that we didn't give ourselves time to think by a moment of control with rational breathing. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your own mind, not over events." This isn't a call to be gentle or patient, but rather a statement of the obvious. Our first reaction is often the wrong one, because it serves our emotions, not our reason. Pointless arguments, self-pitying retorts, and day-long frustrations all come from reacting before we understand the situation. In Stoic practice, the break on anger is a brief pause before action. The 3 steps are simple. Pause for a few seconds, breathe slowly to get the nerves out of reactive mode, and ask a cold question. Is this worth losing my peace? The question is not to make us endure, but to gauge the value of the action at hand. Often the answer is no, because most of what upsets us affects only the ego, not the world. If calm depends on a breath, then every time we skip it, what are we protecting? Our dignity, or just our ego wanting to react quickly? The interesting thing about insults is that they don't have any weight until we give them meaning. A thoughtless remark, a rude comment, or an offensive remark doesn't automatically create a negative emotion. The reaction only occurs after we interpret it in a hurtful way. People often believe they're angry because of what was said, when in reality they're angry because of how they interpreted it. It's like giving yourself the keys to your house, emotional, control filter with reason, to others with just one word. Epictetus once said, "It is not the thing that bothers us, but the way we look at it." If we look closely, we will see that an insult often says more about the speaker than the person being insulted. An insecure person tends to put others down. A jealous person is likely to attack what they cannot achieve. A stressed person vents their emotions through words. So why use our own emotions to validate their problems? In Stoic practice, insults are categorized rather than reacted to blindly. The first step is depersonalization. Listen to the sound, not immediately assigning personal meaning. Next, consider the source of the words, whether they come from ignorance, insecurity, or just habit of attacking others. Finally, change the meaning. It is no longer "they insulted me," but they are expressing themselves. When we stop seeing ourselves as the center of every comment, we achieve a state of emotional immunity, not of enduring in silence, but of not letting others dictate the interpretations in our heads. If a harsh remark reflects the speaker and not the listener, why should we react as if it defines us? A large part of our frustration comes from trying to control something that isn't ours. We want people to be kind, to understand, to respect boundaries, to communicate appropriately, or at least to think before they speak. But the reality is that many people don't operate the way we expect them to. Yet the common response is to try to fix, to convince, to change. As a result, we are emotionally dragged down by things we can't control. In other words, we are using our energy to force the world to conform to our standards, instead of adjusting to them ourselves. Principle of accepting limits of emotional control. Stoicism separates problems according to a simple criterion. What is within our control, we deal with. What is beyond our control, we let go. It sounds simple, but in real-life situations, we often ignore that boundary. A disrespectful remark from a coworker triggers the urge to fix them. A reckless driver makes us want to teach them a lesson. Someone arguing makes us want to prove ourselves right. In all these situations, we react as if we have the power to change them, even though we don't. The application of the control filter is not avoidance, but organization. The first step is to recognize the emotion that is arising. Then ask a short enough question: is this within my control? If the answer is no, the most rational response is to stop rather than continue to invest emotionally. Finally, shift your attention to what is within your control: your tone of voice, your attitude, your choice of words, your decision to leave or continue. Emotions that get out of control are often not caused by the event, but by us trying to take ownership of something that is not ours. So when we get angry, are we defending our position? Or are we trying to take ownership of someone else's behavior that we can't? One of the most common mental errors is to exaggerate the magnitude of a problem. Something that is only a minor annoyance is treated as a crisis by the brain. A small mistake by another person is considered a serious disrespect. An innocent and harmless action becomes a reason to be angry. The nervous system does not measure the magnitude. It only reacts emotionally, so the reaction often goes far beyond the event itself. If we do not recognize this process, we easily live in a state of false stress, wasting energy on things that are not worth it. Instead of maintaining it, discipline to classify emotions according to their level of reality. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you can bear it, bear it. If you can't, stop complaining." Underlying this isn't blind endurance, but the question: is the problem big enough to be worth the emotional investment? Will what we get angry about today matter 5 hours from now? Will we remember it 5 days from now? The answer is mostly no. This suggests that anger isn't born of the event itself, but of the exaggeration our brain assigns to it. In practical terms, Stoicism suggests putting numbers to emotions. When a problem comes up, rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. If it's a 2 but we react like it's an 8, we're out of balance. Our reaction should be proportional to our assessment, and in many cases, not reacting is optimal. When we don't react, we're not avoiding it. We're just shifting our attention to something more worthwhile. If a small thing can dominate our inner state, is the problem with the event itself, or is it that we fail to appreciate its size? Most people don't realize that they live their lives as if emotions were an unlimited resource. They react to every incivility, argue over every detail, dwell on the petty behavior of strangers, and waste their energy on things that add no value. If emotions were a form of asset, many people would spend their lives uncontrollably, like spending all day on cheap things because they don't know how to evaluate their true value. In the Stoic perspective, peace doesn't come from a quiet world, but from the principle of saving emotional energy for important values. Marcus Aurelius once noted that every day he would meet selfish, hasty, rude people, but their reactions had nothing to do with his character. This suggests that peace is not a gentle response, but a discipline. We choose what to respond to and what to ignore. People who spend their emotions carelessly often let meaninglessness define their moods. Emotional minimalists remain calm, not because they are easygoing, but because they value their inner self. Practicing emotional minimalism is not about avoiding, but about choosing the battlefield. Staying silent in the face of provocation is not cowardice, but about refusing to spend emotions where they are not beneficial. Not taking on the negative emotions of others is not insensitivity, but about preserving sanity. Choosing peace over being right is not about losing, but about avoiding handing victory to something that does not deserve it. And most importantly, not every battle is worth our presence. So if we consider emotions as assets, are we investing them in something valuable, or are we just wasting them on people who don't give us any value in return? Chapter. It is a common phenomenon that people who are easily angered are often not busy with anything important. When life lacks direction, small things easily become the focus. A tactless word, someone's carelessness, a silly behavior is enough to ruin the whole day. But when a person is pursuing a big goal, their attention is automatically filtered. They do not have time to react to every meaningless thing. Anger does not disappear. It is just neutralized by the bigger priority. That is why principles form a higher standard of living in how to discipline your emotions for long-term goals considered an important tool of Stoic thought. See a man by what he pursues. This explains why a person who wastes time is also likely to waste emotions. When all of his inner energy has nowhere to go, it seeks out small objects to cling to, and thus develops a habit of exaggerated reactions. On the other hand, a person who is committed to a mission, in work, in personal development, or in family roles, rarely feels the need to respond to meaningless behavior. He chooses to stay focused, not out of gentleness, but because he knows what is worthy of his attention. Practicing high standards of living is not about being morally superior to others. It begins with defining what you stand for, setting your own standards, and measuring yourself by them. When your standards are clear, someone else's insult or stupidity has no power to dictate your direction. When your standards are high enough, trivialities fall from your awareness. If a small thing can easily drag us down, then is it not the other person's actions that are the problem, but that we are not tall enough to see it become meaningless? A large part of anger comes not from the actions of others, but from our expectation that they should understand, respond appropriately, respect boundaries, or behave logically as we expect them to. When reality doesn't match expectations, emotions collide with disappointment. People are often not angry about what happened, but about the outcome they wanted but didn't get. That's why Stoicism sees clinging to expectations as a form of losing control. We use our emotions to demand that the world behave the way we want it to, rather than to regulate ourselves within it. The skill of letting go of expectations in rational communication. Stoics don't try to win every conversation. They do their part, speak clearly, maintain composure, set boundaries when necessary. Then they allow others to respond in whatever way they choose, whether reasonable or unreasonable. When we demand that people understand, accept our point of view, or respect us, we are invading uncontrollable territory. And this is where resentment comes from. Detaching from expectations doesn't mean suffering in silence. It means recognizing the boundaries of responsibility. Your part is to act right. The rest is up to others. Once communicated clearly, the job is done. If the other person doesn't cooperate, the Stoic sees the optimal response as being to disengage and leave the game, not chasing results. Because trying to force others to be reasonable only creates more roles in a useless drama. That's why the Stoic protocol, the 30-second ritual, acts as a break. Stop, exhale, name the emotion, narrow the issue, choose a standard response, and either respond briefly or walk away. Not to avoid conflict, but to not let conflict define you. If other people's reactions are beyond our control, is it worth risking our peace just to achieve an outcome that is not ours? Many of the things that upset us are not important enough to be worth the effort. When we react to things, we become controlled by every little event. But when we choose to react, we move from being affected to being in control of our inner self. The difference is in our attitude toward the little stimuli, not the stimuli themselves. Peace is not a given state of life. It is an asset that must be carefully built, maintained, and invested in. Every time we stop in the face of stupidity, refuse to engage in pointless arguments, or set limits on irrational behavior, we protect that asset. Not because we want to be nice, but because we don't want to be manipulated by things that are too small to care about. If peace is a value, then who holds it, and who spends it for us? The answer appears in every moment we decide to react or not to react. It's not in affirmations, but in repeated choices. When we understand this, the statement, "I choose peace over anger," is no longer a statement, but a concrete action. If you want to continue to explore rational perspectives on how people manage their emotions and behaviors, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future analyses.